Community Motors West Side, the GM Superstore next to Cinema West. Community Motors of Mason City, we give you more.
One of the bigger budgets. And, I think at this time I'll turn it over to Mary and present.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to start by telling you guys thanks for letting me replace Ronnie. I certainly do appreciate that. It's an essential position, so I just wanted to let you know that. Like normal, you guys have a memo I wrote to you guys that explains the equipment, construction projects, and I included in there this new salt storage shed. I'll start with the equipment. I have $300,000 in there for the replacement of one motor grader. The motor grader I'm looking to replace is a 1996 with 12,500 hours. So that's quite a few hours. It's been a good machine, but it's getting to that point where if we don't replace it, we'll probably be buying a transmission and engine soon. For construction, I have S14 resurfacing from B55 where we stopped last year north to the Ventura city limits for $1.7 million. And then I have that bridge replacement at the grade. Now we've kind of been working jointly with Cerro Gordo Trails to try to get the trail in there and the culvert replacement. So I do have some funding, $140,000 for the trail. We applied for funding application, and I've made it clear to the trail people that we can't pay for the trail, but with their local match and state or federal funding, we would be the sponsoring agency. We did find out last Friday the federal aid dollars were not awarded, so we probably need to sit down with them and talk to them and see if they want to go for the state dollars. So that's at that time we weren't aware of if it would be awarded or not, so it is in there. And then in the maintenance for it's not included in the construction, but it's included in maintenance. I included $200,000 to do some chip seal, possibly on B43 from S70 to Highway 65. It's kind of unraveling. We do a lot of potholes.
I noticed that last week.
A lot
on that road.
Yeah, a lot of pothole repairs, and there's just no money to resurface all these roads, so we're going to have to start looking at, and we used to do a lot of them back in the 80s, a lot of chip seals, so we're going to probably have to start looking at more of that. So I do have $200,000 in there for that. Those tend to last 5 to 7 years. The GPS I have in there, budgeted $20,000 for the GPS tracking for the trucks. Our radios that we had to purchase to be compliant with FCC in 2013 have the capability of doing the GPS. We're ready for a software update, and when they do that software update, they have to go out to the trucks and physically update the software, and at that time they can enable that GPS, but you have to have the software to do data collection and keep that information and store that information. So I do have $20,000, like I said, in my budget for that. Salt storage shed, I do have photos for you. You can see that the Clear Lake salt storage shed has got some issues structurally. There's some photos with the columns, and it's titled West Wall of Salt Shed, and there's some cracks in the columns going up the side of the wall. There's probably a third of the columns that are like that are starting to fail, and then there's one that has failed in the north wall that's cracked. So we've had some movement in that west wall where they've put some of these cables across and they've pulled that wall back in, and I guess I'm just slightly concerned for some liability issues and safety. And then secondly, the shed can't store the amount of salt because I've told them not to put it so high. So instead of, originally they put 300 tons of salt in there. Well, now you can only maybe do 150 to 200 tons of salt. So it can't hold the salt same amount of salt. So with that, there's some things to think about. I have an aerial photo in here. You got a couple options for building site. You can build it at the same site, or I know when we sold the airport pit, Jim saved back 5 acres for a possible future site that is available. Or I know there is some space for the sheriff's department, but that's kind of far away. The brochure Jay is holding is the company I talked to get a rough budget number as to what a salt shed would cost. I just put that in there for your information so you could see what we were looking at. They're used for a lot of salt sheds. So. And then I provided an aerial of the Clear Lake shed prior to the pool and after the pool. And this would be why I would consider not building the salt shed here. Is the dynamics of the area's changed. There's a lot of pedestrians running across the parking lot, the maintainer, and the equipment. Those are big pieces of equipment with not good visibility. And we are getting more pedestrian traffic. We've lost our cold storage shed. They tore that down when they built the pool. So I don't know if we're kind of getting squeezed out, or but just something to consider if you allow us to build a new salt shed location would be. We want to be future thinking on that.
So are you suggesting that we go to that 5-acre site?
Possibly, if you guys are okay with that, and like I said, we want to, or if we're going to stay here for another 50 years, then we should build it here. But if we're even considering moving, then possibly moving it to that site. That site is good for, it's off the interstate, so it's accessible for the Rockwell shop, the Mason City shop. If we built a little bigger storage shed, it would allow us to have additional salt on hand, and that would be beneficial to us. Sometimes you can order your salt and you don't get it right away. So
this entire issue could have been a lot easier if, to handle if we could have gotten some help from our brothers in Clear Lake when they were going to
build their shed, a joint shop.
Yes.
That would have been nice. A joint shop.
I think we're eventually going to get pushed out of
there, and it's kind of looking like that. And if you ever drive one of those there's a lot of little kids. It does concern me. I don't want to get that phone call that somebody gets injured because they get ran over. And then I do have $20,000 in the budget. I have pictures of our building. The chimney needs to be replaced. The chimney is essential for the boiler, and it's deteriorating, and the bricks are falling off the chimney. So I included that so you could see why I wanted to replace that. And then I think that's the bulk of it. I also included, just for your information for future planning, our building is kind of getting in rough shape. The windows, the mortar, it needs some tuck pointing, which can be expensive. There's been moisture that's gotten into these sills, and it's caused cracking of the mortar, and then some of the bricks have spalled, broken off on the side of the building. So it's pretty big dollars to get the tuck pointing done, but just so you're aware of it, it might be in the future.
Are you looking to work on the chimney this year?
Yeah, well, probably maybe in the summer or next fall. Yeah, possibly.
Okay.
So that's the bulk of that. If you guys have any questions.
Yeah, I think the future location of the salt shed. I think where you're thinking about north of 1.2 is definitely the way to go.
That's one hurdle, that is in city limits, so I'll have to talk to the city of Clear Lake about getting permit. I'm sure
Why has it been so helpful to this point? Why did they help us?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So that would be one of the hurdles, but it shouldn't be a problem.
Should be a problem.
Not out by the interstate, I wouldn't imagine.
You know, the budget stuff, this is kind of way out there. This salt thing, in the sense that, do you see people gravitating? They've got some kind of a solution, they go to a brine?
Like a brine.
Or is that a
It's
whole
how
different
you-
process, if
it's-
it eliminate or not?
It's
or
kind of a
what's
whole
the-
different process. The DOT uses it a lot, they use it for pre-wedding.
Okay.
And that's something, you can do that,
Mhm.
but you
That's-
need to be on your roads more, because if you get the
Oh.
blowing wind, you get the
Okay.
ice and or the snow that sticks to it, and then it freezes over. And since we don't start till 5 in the morning and we're done by 6, you could have a lot of accumulation on the road if
I
you're
just
not
throw
on.
that out there.
So,
So you don't see salt going away in the next
no,
future?
that's $75 a ton, I wish, but. And then, just, I know we've had a lot of problems with farming the right of way, and since I had you guys together, I put together one of these brochures. I don't know if you like it or not. It's free to look at, review, provide me comments. If,
Let me put it this way, it's the best brochure I've seen on this subject so far.
well, and these are all pictures in Cerro Gordo County. So,
I know.
it happens.
Got some good local shots.
Yeah. So, I don't know, I thought maybe if I could give it out at the Farm Bureau meetings, township trustee meetings.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Yep, I do
And
too.
so if you have any comments, please offer them.
Okay. You have anything else?
I don't think at this time I do.
Okay. You guys got any questions for Mary?
I don't think so.
What would happen if we shared, yeah, what would happen if we tried to share salt with, say, Fairleigh?
We could try, I mean, just one entity would have to accept the salt, and then we'd have to have a method of keeping
Yep.
track of it. I don't know what
I
their.
doubt it's the-
Do they use the same system that we do, or do they?
I believe they do, because our salt's been delivered to their shed, and then we've gotten the bill for it. So, so I know they use the same salt,
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
and I know they have it. I know they have a storage shed. Now, how much their shed holds, I'm not sure.
Do they
That's
sand a
how-
lot in Clear Lake?
Probably not.
Probably not. Probably their main routes, but the other ones they probably just plow. I would imagine. Maybe intersections, stop signs, stuff like that.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Mary.
All right, thank you.
Now we can look forward to the health department.
Mary just whispered in my ear saying we'd like 25% of her budget we could have. it.
Oh, okay.
And he wants to start paving the roads and plowing them too. He thinks he can do it cheaper.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Kathy, how are you?
Yeah. I can get one of those.
Yes, well, it wasn't much of it.
Well.
Yeah. I know we're not gonna fail, but it's just maintenance issues that need to be addressed, so. Yep.
Okay, are you guys ready? We'll turn it over to Ron.
Great. I told Kathy to try being done before 1 o'clock, so she's like,
Okay. Sounds like a good idea.
okay, very good. Go ahead.
You know, we're pretty lucky. Our budget's put together by the department heads,
of each section. And so therefore, we've got the experts putting together what they need to run their programs. So the compilation comes together on the end of our final numbers. And expenses, what we're looking at is 3.4, right around that 3.4 million is probably where we've been running for the last few years, somewhere between 3.2 and 3.5. Our revenue piece is probably where we're feeling the biggest pinch this year, with some cuts on the state side of things. We're looking at a revenue piece of 1.8 million. It may seem like a little bit more than last year's budget, but it's actually 94,000 less than last year actuals. With 6 grants that we administer, have seen some pretty huge cuts to the tune of $134,000 in those programs. The HIV program, our immunization program, our tobacco program, our lead program, our local public health services grant, and our preparedness grant. All 6 of those have seen some pretty hefty cuts. You can see the totals that we've seen in each of those areas. You know, and even with those cuts, we still have to maintain and can maintain those same service levels. Medicare cuts are taking some huge pinches on every time we send out our nurses. So we're seeing a lower reimbursement rate on those. So in the same sense, to maintain those service levels, the cost keeps going up a little bit more. On the exciting piece, we have 3 new grants this year to help supplement some of those cuts. We have a new PREP grant, is kind of our acronym for it, but it's actually for teen pregnancy. And we have a community transformation grant that was going to work really well right in with our Blue Zone programs. And then Safe Route to Schools. We have our Safe Route to School walking school bus program, and then we're also in partnership with the city one as well. So those new grants have been a huge, a nice help to supplement some of those losses that we're experiencing on the revenue side. On the expense side, with the additional salaries and benefits side, the grant required one of the teen pregnancy grant required a part-time RN and some outside service contracts. We're hoping for the regional preparedness piece of some state money, and that also has some contractor costs inside that too. So with that in a nutshell, kind of helps put together where the expense side is coming from.
Will them grants be enough to cover the expense of hiring some some extra people and stuff?
The grant will cover 100% of salary benefits, plus all the other expenses, plus it allows us to collect on our indirect. So it helps even actually offset. So we're not adding expenses. Sure. That's something we've had discussions on in the future with grants. We're going to take a close look at grants as they come from federal down to state. What we're seeing is that state maintains a little bit more of the share, and the locals get a little bit less. Yet our requirements don't change, and so we may take serious looks at future grants. We may have to look at not accepting those grants and just turn them back, and then look at reorganizing. We just cannot continue. And literally, we've been looking at programs in the Medicaid area. A lot of programs such as Medicaid waiver. Some organizations have discontinued providing the service because what they reimburse for your costs are not aligned whatsoever. And there could be a potential threat in Cerro County that there may no longer be Medicare waiver providers. And we'll have to take a look at things like that as well.
Okay. Go ahead.
That was in a nutshell what we had for our details. If you want to add to that.
It's just in the very back portion, the last 2 pages, attachment E, it goes over the different service sections and the programs, the normal format that we present each year. So we've actually broken down by program what the expenses are, what the revenues are. And so that's just there for your review.
What was the tax support for 2011-12?
The final number was 1391067. Oh, yeah, 139,1067 was last year's tax support. And then we're looking at 139,000 plus last year's tax support. And then our shortfall is gonna be 111,000, and that's what our fund balance will be ready to commit if needed. Our real goal is throughout the year to come up with some new revenue pieces that in years past, we've been pretty lucky along the way. Throughout the year, we come up with some smaller grants throughout the year to help supplement.
And that amount could be less too, because we base our cost on 12% for health insurance, so less that there'll be some from that. And the 139,000 Catherine alluded to, that does include the 2.5%. Of course, we saw a huge jump in unemployment throughout the whole county due to changes within that particular category. And again, this budget's worst case scenario. We've, in the past years, have presented a worst case scenario. 2 years ago, presented a budget that would have had $178,000 shortfall, ended up being $22,000. So, well, we made up ground. It's kind of the same concept here. We did the previous year the same way. Looking at 107,000, and it's not going to reach that. This again is worst case scenario.
Right.
So far we've been lucky, except for turned out to be true.
Heather, anything to add?
What? Add?
Hello? Are you working?
Oh, to add?
Anything to add?
No.
If the difference was 9% on the health insurance instead of 12, how would it affect the overall bottom line request here? What would we be looking at? Which, you know, we're all hoping that's where it actually comes in at.
At the 9%,
Yeah.
and the 12. She did that in her head.
15,500?
13,500.
13,500. Okay. I mean, you can see, you go department by department, and you start factoring in that health insurance costs, and a movement of 3 points on that. How many people in your department now, Rob?
About 45.
Right. You go to department by department, and you can see if we come in at 9 instead of 12, you know, that really affects the bottom line across the breadth of the whole county.
Last year, our approved budget, I think, was 1.426, and after the insurance piece was reevaluated, it ended up to be the 1.391.
That's great.
So that was the difference from last year's change. But wasn't last year 15 and 5?
No programs or capital expenditures to speak of, extra programs.
No.
Did you go through the programs that I did?
It's just, we're just talking about the 2.5, the other additional costs you put in there for Pipers and health insurance, et cetera, and that's
Right,
that's basically it.
And those increases, there isn't any capital
Right.
expenditure.
Right.
That's budget, yeah.
And we're locked down on office space rental. I mean, we just entered into that 1 year into the, 3-year agreement, so we're good there. I mean, nothing's, you know.
Nothing, yeah, it's gonna be stable.
Correct.
Any other questions for his people?
Other than, okay, we're sitting here now and we had 11 meetings. One month we don't meet, and there's, as exhaustive and intense of this budget is, we can go into as much as that or as less at every meeting. I mean, they have these facts and figures every month as we just want to point that out. These guys are really one-upsmen on the budget process. And, they could do this every day of the week all day. I mean, they're just You know, they just don't ramp up for this time of the year. They're on top of it every month.
Ron makes me.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I understand that's your job, but, you know, it's
And Ron
always
don't
right
come in
there.
until 10 o'clock in the morning, so imagine what it'd be like if you couldn't.
I have to come in earlier now?
If you come in at 8,
Oh.
they could have a lot of things ready.
You may say.
I tried to.
Appreciate it,
You can base that insurance cost on 240 employees. If we come in at 9 instead of 12, it's a savings of $81,000 countywide.
Pretty substantial. only 3%
Every point
difference.
you move is a big deal when you have a group the size we do to cover. So. How many questions?
Bill, any more questions? Thank you for coming in and meeting with us. We'll, when we get all done with all the budgets, we'll put them together and after Heather shocks us, we'll start figuring out what we can do.
Okay. Very good.
Perfect.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks.
7.5 point favorite this weekend.
That's it?
We started at 6.5, now it's 7.5. Kathy,
I know.
let's not be greedy now. Pretty big win the other night.
Tom even took the night of
Sent poor
vacation.
Tim Tebow off to the sideline for the rest of the year.